Hi, my name is Justin. This is Nook's Cook. Today I'm going to be cooking liempo, a Filipino-style grilled pork belly. So let's start. I'm excited for this one. Liempo is my all-time favorite Filipino food, and the funny thing is I didn't even know the name liempo until I was an adult. Growing up, we called it by a Kapampangan name of derang babi, which literally translates to grilled pork. Grilled pork, derang babi, liempo, it's a popular street food in the Philippines, and I knew it was my favorite Filipino dish when, back on a trip to the Philippines, we were explaining the concept of a final meal or a last meal to my grandma, and this was the first thing that came to mind when it was my turn to share an example. And it was cute because we asked her what her final meal would be, and she brought up my late grandpa's favorite meal, which was a crab omelet or crab torta with a side of a smashed avocado dessert. So this was often a meal that served as like a welcoming meal at my grandma's house, or at least every time we came over. So I have a lot of great memories of it. And also we used to cook this a lot when we were camping growing up. So I have a lot of core memories with this meal. And my hot take is I actually like eating this meal more in the United States than I like eating it in the Philippines for one reason. It's because of the tomatoes. So I love eating this with tomatoes, like these fresh tomatoes with a little bit of salt on them, with onion and green mangoes. I'll talk about that later. But the reason why I like it with tomatoes is because of the freshness that contrasts with the saltiness of the pork, even though we do put salt in the tomatoes. So the tomatoes in the United States, there's a wide variety of tomatoes you can choose from, many very sweet heirloom varieties. And in the Philippines, there's one main tomato, I don't even know what it's called, but you see it all over the place, and they are these round tomatoes. They don't get very red. They're not particularly sweet. So that's why I like it more here than I like it over there. So sorry to all the people who grow tomatoes in the Philippines. I just love it here so much more because of that. And I feel pretty vindicated because I watched a video recently from Feature with Erwan Husef where he was talking about this too. And he got some heirloom tomatoes from a guy who's growing them in higher elevation and was able to get some heirloom varieties. My guess is in the Philippines, because of the heat and the humidity, they're pretty limited on the type of tomatoes they can grow. Maybe if I had some of those heirloom varieties in the Philippines, I would like it there more. But either way, I love it no matter what. And I usually only eat this in the summertime. Here are all the ingredients for my family's version of liempo or derang babi, starting with the pork belly. So this is bone-in pork belly. At my local Filipino grocery store, they sell them in these large slabs. So I went up to the butcher and I asked him to cut them into 1-inch thick strips. That might seem a little bit on the thick side, but as they grill, they tend to shrink. So if you get them too thin, it's super easy to burn the meat and they get dry, and it's just not a good bite when you eat it. So these are 1-inch thick strips. On the flip side, because they are big strips, there is a lot of fat and skin on the top that will render out while you're grilling it, and those can come out and flare up in the grill. So you just have to be careful with it when you're grilling. I've seen many recipes of liempo, and I've seen that they marinate the meat in a various amount of ingredients, and my family keeps it super simple. We have one ingredient, and it's salt. That's it. Just salt. We've had other people try our liempo and they wanted to know our secret, and we had to just tell them, that's it. That's all we do. Just keep it super simple with salt. And on the side, we have some tomatoes. These are various types of tomatoes from my garden. I like to vary the types of tomatoes that I use on the side, so there's a depth of flavor from the different tomato flavors. And then we have an unripe green mango, onion, and then these are all going to be salted as well. And that's it. Start by sprinkling a light layer of kosher salt on both sides of the pork belly. And that's it. Really. That's it. Nothing else. Then I preheated my grill to about 500 degrees on the highest heat and turned it down to medium heat right before I put the pork belly in the grill. Then at this point, I just checked the pork every once in a while, making sure it wasn't getting burned. And you can see here, it's starting to put on a little bit of color, but not quite ready yet to flip over. But once it started getting a lot more brown, then I flipped it over to the other side. At this point, I would just flip over the meat as needed, making sure not to burn it. I like to keep one side of the grill hotter than the other so I can manage the heat and the temperature of the different pieces of the pork belly. Pork belly is a super fatty cut of meat, so there are inevitably going to be some flares. So you just got to be a little bit careful with that, making sure that one, you don't hurt yourself, and two, that the meat doesn't burn too much because of these flares of the fat getting down to the bottom of the grill and flaring up some flames. So once the pork belly are sufficiently cooked, and I don't even really check the temperature, I don't check it at all. I look for this dark brown, beautiful brown color on both sides of the pork belly. This took about 1 hour. And then I turn up the grill to high heat and turn them skin side down. That way this crisps up the pork skin, and then you get that nice crunchy bite. Here is the liempo when it's all done on the grill. I may have burned the skin a little bit, so I decided to pull it off the grill so it didn't get burned anymore, but otherwise it's good. Now it's time to prep the side of salted tomatoes. I used a couple different tomatoes types from my garden to increase the depth of flavor so we have some contrasting flavors of tomatoes, and I just simply cut these into small cubes. At this point, you could add some salt to the tomatoes, mix it up, and use that as the side and call it a day. I usually like to add some onions to this, so I dice some yellow onion and add it to the tomatoes as well. Like before, you could add some salt to this, mix it up and call it a day, and I want to add one more extra layer of flavor to my side of tomatoes, so when I can get access to some unripe green mangoes, I add it in. I start by peeling the mango, and on the exposed side of the mango, I take my knife and chop away at it at different angles, and then I flip it on its side and shave off the thin little pieces of mango. And if you're wondering where I learned this from one of my aunties in the Philippines. This is a video I took years and years ago, and you'd think I was planning for this YouTube channel for a long time now. There's no real set proportion to how this side of tomatoes is prepared. If I was to summarize it, I would say a lot of tomatoes, a little bit of mango, a little bit of onion, and then you salt it to taste. Now it's time to cut up the grilled pork belly. Start by cutting out the bone. These bony pieces make for a nice little snack for the person who's doing all the cutting. Now it's time to start cutting the pork belly. I cut them to about 1/4 inch thick pieces, and you only want to cut the pork belly that you're actually going to eat that day. I find the best way to reheat this up for eating later is heat up the whole piece of pork belly in a toaster oven at 350 degrees for about 10 minutes, and then you can cut it up just like this. The liempo is ready, and it's time to give it a taste. You can see here the skin got a little bit on the burn side, but I had a little bit of a taste while I was cutting it all, and it tasted fine to me. I mean, not just fine, it was still really good. So let's try it by itself. Magantamo, let's eat. And you can hear the crunchiness of that skin. Yummy, it's good. So let's try it all together. You see when I plated it, I had a lot of tomatoes on here. Like I mentioned before, this is more like a tomato dish with pork to me, as opposed to a pork dish with tomato. So eventually I eat just like the tomato and the rice all by itself. Okay, let's eat. To me, that's a perfect bite. You get so many different flavors all at the same time. You get the porkiness, the saltiness, the umami of the pork. Of course, there's rice to mellow all that out. Plus you have the contrast with the tomatoes, which are sweet and they're salted, so you get the saltiness of that. You have the onion flavor, and then you have the unripe green mango. So the unripe green mango are sweet, but still have a little bit of sour notes because they are unripe, and they have that nice crunchy texture in addition to the onions. So you get so much in one little bite, and it's just like a flavor explosion. Let's take one more bite. So you can taste a little bit of the char on the skin. I would prefer a little bit less char, but not enough that it would make me not like this. Not only do I try to only eat this in the summer, I really try to avoid this anytime outside of the summertime because I just get disappointed by the flavor of the tomatoes. The pork is always going to taste good, but to really make it perfect and all come together, it's really the tomatoes that all brings it together. Most store-bought tomatoes are pretty bland. Usually they're picked green, and one of the reasons they're picked green is they're still hard, and that makes them easier to transport because if you have a fully ripe tomato, they can get bruised really easily. So commercially, they take tomatoes, they pick them green where they're still hard, and then they put them in a cold storage or refrigerator, and when they're ready to be sold at the store, they expose them to something called ethylene gas, and that's what turns the tomatoes red. So they never really develop that full sweet flavor that they're supposed to have and that juiciness. That's why they're on the drier side, or at least not very juicy, and they have no flavor. They're very watery in flavor. I mean, they're dry, but they're watery in flavor, if that makes any sense. So the best time for tomatoes is in the summertime. The only time for tomatoes really is the summertime, at least for fresh tomatoes. Still my all-time favorite Filipino food. Hey everyone, thanks again for watching. I really appreciate each and every one of you, and this may be kind of morbid, though leave a comment down below what your final meal would be if you had a choice. And remember to like and subscribe. Peace!